Welcome everyone, I'm Spiro with another update and perspective on the coronavirus, as we are now 2.5 months into the outbreak originating in Wuhan, China. Now, at the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak, I reported how just weeks before the first reports of the virus began to come in, a pandemic exercise called Event 201, simulating a global coronavirus outbreak, was held in New York City. The United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, the American and Chinese CDC, the media, major banks, vaccine manufacturers, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation all participated. Now, the events of the simulation are almost eerily prophetic, as we are now seeing the same players living out the simulation as the virus known as COVID-19 is reported to have spread to dozens of countries, and 760 million people in China alone are on lockdown. Now, that is more than 10% of the entire world's population. Let that sink in for a moment. Then we learn that the same day that Event 201 took place in New York City, the Military World Games was holding its opening ceremonies, hosting 110 nations and thousands of military members from around the world in Wuhan, China, what we now know to be as ground zero of the outbreak, again just weeks before the virus was first reported. Now, as more and more scientists and experts raise their concerns that the virus may have come from the Level 4 bioweapons lab located there in Wuhan, China, in my previous report, we explored the possibility that a foreign military or intelligence operation could have used the military Olympic type of event as cover to carry out a covert operation, unleashing the biowarfare agent, knowing that if the truth eventually came out about the virus being weaponized, the nearby Level 4 lab would take the blame. Now, is this the perfect cover or just another coincidence? Now let's take a closer look at the opening ceremonies for the Military World Games held in Wuhan, China on the same day that the UN coronavirus simulation was in New York City. Now, when I had seen the UN-themed portion of the opening ceremonies in Wuhan, which is ground zero for the coronavirus outbreak, taking place on the same day as the UN-themed coronavirus outbreak simulation, I have to admit I was amazed, and I have a hard time believing that this is just one big coincidence. But this was not the only major military and defense event to take place in China during this time frame. As reported by Logical Annie, the 9th Jingshan Forum was held 2 days later in Beijing. It was a UN type of forum with over 500 delegates from 76 nations. And at this forum, China's defense minister spoke out about China's reunification with Taiwan as being a top priority, which no nation can stop. He went on to blast the U.S. for selling arms to Taiwan. China's defense minister also accused the U.S. of inciting a color revolution in Hong Kong. As we see, the coronavirus outbreak has crippled China, with more than half of its population on some type of lockdown. China's economy has grind to a halt, as we see many nations closing its doors to China and Chinese goods. On the heels of the U.S.-China trade war, China, the world's largest economy, is now at a standstill. Now, this opens a door and a vacuum for another country to take its place at the top, a move the U.S. hopes to capitalize upon. Now, as China was also hit by a massive case of bird flu and killed off large portions of its chickens, China was forced to lift the ban on U.S. poultry imports. Now, the recent 5G rollout and U.S. battle with Chinese telecom giant Huawei still lingers in the air. One of China's biggest exports has been hit exceptionally hard: telecom hardware, computers, and electronics, as the Wuhan-based Huawei takes a major hit. Yeah, that's right. Huawei has a major headquarters right there in Ground Zero, Wuhan, China. Now, these are just a couple of examples of how the U.S. could potentially benefit as China is now crippled by this outbreak, as this will force many nations to either become more independent and not rely so heavily upon China, or look elsewhere. Now, President Trump has been saying throughout his presidency that he intends to bring industry and jobs back to the U.S. Now, whether this is all just a big coincidence or not, this freezes America's #1 economic enemy, China, at least for the moment, temporarily. But we cannot disregard the UN's fingerprints on this crisis, as this opens up the door for more global control and a cashless society potentially, as we see China already removing its paper fiat currency for possible virus contamination, just as the world's central banks are about to launch their own central bank digital currencies. This appears to be playing right into the UN's global governance agenda, the 2030 agenda, Agenda 21, as a deadly pandemic could be used to justify pretty much anything they want. And don't forget, whatever rights you think you have disappear once an emergency is declared. We're already seeing people hauled off and taken away in China. Stay tuned for more. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter and BitChute. I'm Spiro. Thanks for watching, and please be sure to share your thoughts below.